All right, it's 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call. Everybody on my left.
Terry Burmeister present.
Kyle Eichhorn present.
Jenny Sisson present.
Is anybody virtual?
James online.
There's one other, but not Jenny.
Okay, all right, we do have a quorum. All right, and so the approval of minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. I have a motion, do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Minutes are approved. On to old business. Looks like no old business to discuss. We'll move to new business.
Right.
VO 419-2022-01 variance on architectural and setback standards at 0 State Road 38 Southwest Way Roundabout, Three Rivers Federal Credit Union via Tim Bailey.
All right. So this is a variance, like Kyle described it, as at 0 State Route 38 southwest of the roundabout. Property is highlighted there in black. Denise, can you roll down a little bit, please? Thank you. And they are asking for variances on building orientation, front setback for one of the buildings, allow 2 monument signs per business instead of just one. One would be facing State Street and the other on Henderson Way. And then the eve requirements from 3 feet down to 12 inches. So Tim Bailey, if you'd like to come up. Can you scroll to the next slide, please? So this is the site plan. As you see, the buildings in question are A and B. And then there are some renderings of the buildings on the next 2 slides. You do have that presentation on your iPads if you want to see it a little bit closer. But Tim Bailey is here to answer any questions you might have about the variances.
I'm Mike Romery with Strategic Growth Advisors. Tim Bailey is not here. He's our lead architect. So I'm here to ask or answer any questions that you folks might have for us. This is the design that we currently have. We're going to talk about briefly that we're looking to have. This is actually what the plan is. And so we have 3 different facilities that are going to be on this piece of dirt right off of State Road 38. These are the elevations that we have proposed that we just wanted to give you guys a look at. We have done 9 projects, 10 projects for Three Rivers Federal Credit Union. And we have 3 more that are going up right now. We design and build financial institutions. So this is kind of what this is what we're proposing for the new space. Then we also have another tenant that is secured. We have Starbucks that's coming in. So there's going to be the Three Rivers Federal Credit Union with Starbucks, and then we have a spot for an additional structure there, which we have a lot of takers right now. We're just trying to figure out what would be the best for the customer. Any questions?
If everything goes as planned, when will completion approximate?
Completion for, Starbucks wants to go up right now. The Three Rivers Federal Credit Union, they want to go up right now. So it's just a sequencing thing. Usually it takes about 165 days to put up these buildings, these structures. So as soon as we get the green light and we can start moving dirt, we have our team in place to do that. So we're looking at about 160 to 170 days depending on weather.
So I'm assuming as far as architectural material requirements and all that, you've reviewed the,
Yeah,
They're all in
these are the
compliance.
only things they
Okay.
need variances for, they're fine on materials.
so as regarding the findings of fact, do we have a proposed findings of fact to review that we can incorporate?
You have the proposed findings of fact that are supplied by the petitioner. You can adopt those as written, or you can make amendments. Also, don't forget that you have the ability to impose reasonable conditions on approval. Or we can craft those here tonight based on the presentation and public comment that we received.
I guess, do you have a presentation that you want to,
For analysis.
yeah, I guess if you want to review.
Yeah, I mean, the variances from these standards don't pose public safety issues. They're pretty reasonable for leniency on this site. It is a pretty odd shaped site, and the lots are weird. They're really short, or long and narrow. So trying to face the buildings to, and their double frontage lots to State Street would probably really pose some site design issues. So I think if you look at the renderings, the faces that would be on State Street look like the front of a building. They're not boring or, not fitting our architecture standards. So I think they would be sufficient. Building A, the way that this parcel line cuts across is at a pretty severe angle, so it'd be really hard to set that back 75 feet. So they're proposing 44 feet.
So this will be replatted into 3 lots.
That's what I would like to see down there.
Do you have any concern with that change in that setback?
No.
No, there's enough there as a buffer. I mean, the way that parcel, like I said, slants down, there's a whole lot of grassy room in front of there anyway. We were concerned about like a car running off the road, which is why those setbacks are generally so large. So there is additional space that is our right of way that's not gonna ever get built in. So it doesn't really concern me for
Like future widening of roads, any concern there?
No, we have as much right of way as we need on West State Street as far as I'm aware, or 38. 120 feet, right, at the roundabout.
What's the question?
Our right of way is 100.
I don't know,
Yeah,
but it's probably about that.
yeah.
Do you have a timing on building C? No. Well, I guess, I guess we can invite public comment. If anybody wants to speak on the matter, come up to the podium. Anybody online?
Not comment.
No comments? Okay. So our UDO only allows one monument sign per building, is that?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. So they're asking for one on,
so each building has 2.
yeah, so there'll be one on Henderson and then one on 38.
Okay,
They do, I know it's really small, but they do have them indicated where they would go in the grass.
yeah, I saw those.
Yeah,
And you're fine with the E reduction from 3 foot to 1 foot?
yeah, I mean, it fits on the building and the other 2 will be flat roofed, so
Okay.
they won't have E requirements.
Okay.
And as long as there's proper drainage.
I guess we can go ahead unless there's other input. Adopt the findings of fact on the application.
Yeah,
Those seem applicable.
yes, it appears to me it follows the recommendation of our planning director, so.
Okay. Well, I guess I will entertain a motion to approve the 4 variances presented.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Any discussion?
Just to clarify that that motion includes the adoption of the findings of fact as presented by the petitioner.
All right, no discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, on to new business, item 2, CU 0419-2022-02. Conditional use for an indoor outdoor boat storage at 8843 West 700 South. Indy Boat Company via David Gilman.
All right, so this is a recent rezone to heavy business. As far as I'm aware, you're still in process of replatting the property to have the 5 and the 9 acres.
Yep.
Okay, so that's still in process, but we're only talking about the 5-acre L shape there. They would like a conditional use for indoor outdoor boat storage, which per our UDO is under automobile and vehicle storage, not junk or salvage, and requires a conditional use. So the parcel fits everything required for size parameters on a heavy business parcel, but the use is what they would have to get conditional on. And you can see on the next page, there are some renderings of the site plan, the layout of the indoor areas and then the outdoor areas of the southern part of the parcel.
What's that east of the parking lot? Is that a mound or a pond?
That is our area that we think we'll have for dry detention.
Okay,
Originally, we thought it might be wet. The civil engineer thought that we might be able to do dry detention, so we didn't know if it was wet, we probably would close it inside the fence. If it's dry, then it might not be part of our fencing. I don't know.
so you have an outlet down there somewhere?
The name of is it Turner Ditch?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Eventually, we would get to Turner Ditch. We just haven't figured out exactly how.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, for the record, my name is David Gilman. My office address is 211 South River Avenue, Suite H, Indianapolis 46219. I'm here today to represent Wake Development LLC, address 8843 West County Road 700 South. The Planning Commission approved an HG or an HB zoning on about 14 acres. The first phase of the development would be the eastern 5 acres, and then we'll have a western 9 acres that will be for future development, which may be my client's showroom place for their boat business that currently is in Noblesville, Indiana. We're excited to try to move this zoning and the conditional use along so that they can start moving their storage facility business to this property, and then eventually start looking at the opportunity to possibly build or bring their entire boat sales business to Pendleton on the remaining 9 acres. The first phase that we're asking for your consideration tonight as a conditional use is we have 6 buildings laid out. Those buildings are 60 by 160. We've done it in a manner that we think is the most sensitive to the undeveloped area and some of the homes that are out there. Mainly, we have the one drive coming off of 700. We have all of the access points to getting into the buildings facing internally. And I think that is that the most recent point. They all come from the east, enter from the east. Then we have the small outdoor storage area furthest to the south. The frontage along 700 and the frontage along, which would be the interstate and the area to the west, will be heavily landscaped with double rows of pine. One thing that we've asked, and it'll be second part of our presentation, or we could combine it into the one, is that we would ask that the board grant us a materials variance. This use would be unmanned. It's only accessible by the employees. There will be no customers there. The nature of the business is for their existing customers to have a place to store their boats through the winter. And only Indy Boat Company employees will be at the site. And when somebody wants their boat delivered to go to the lake or wherever, an Indy Boat employee will come out, get their boat, lock the gate, and deliver the boat back to their Noblesville business so that they can pass it on to the customer. So the use in its nature will be very seasonal. You won't have a lot of activity in the fall or in the winter, more activity in the spring and the summer. Again, the only people that would access the site are employees, so we don't feel that this use is going to generate a lot of traffic and cause a burden to anybody that lives in the area. We think that with it being well screened with evergreen trees that have some foliage year round, we've also picked out the color palette to be earth tone. So we have hunter green rooftops and then an ivory gold siding. So we would hope that would blend in with the natural area out there. These buildings would be virtually invisible, but we thought that that was important because of the material variants we're asking, because they will be proposed to be all steel. We felt that we needed the security. Obviously, these are boat storage. They'll be unmanned, there won't be offices, so there really will be no need for any type of window treatment. We would prefer not to have the windows for security. Again, the metal storage is what is used in the industry for this type of product. We're ready to move very quickly on the buildings. Should this be approved, I believe we would start with the first two buildings further south and then work our way back towards 700. And eventually, if we get to buildings 5 and 6, that's where the existing residents would come down and we would replace it with our final two buildings to complete the development. Again, it's for boat storage only, and we would ask that you consider our conditional use tonight. And with that, I'll open it up for questions that members of the board and the audience have.
I have a question. Being a retired firefighter, I'm wondering how much fuel is going to be on site?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. The boats will have fuel in them. And we will have to go through state plan review for a S1 storage occupancy. And they do have limitations on the size of the buildings and what type and how much storage of combustibles we're allowed to have. But yes, we were very much aware of that. That was the first question that we asked about that. The other thing is that, trying to do non-combustible buildings helps. But we do have a full-time architect that is designing the buildings, and he will take that to the state. And then all of that will be obviously sent through Pendleton Building Office when we get our permits. But these will have to go through state plan review, fire code.
Do the boats get drained and winterized then, so there's not excess?
I thought they did, but I was actually wrong. They don't. They would prefer you not to drain. Like we do our lawnmowers, we all drain it. That's what they tell us to do. But in a boat, you do not want to drain it. So yes, they would be leaving the fuel in them. Sometimes they even want to top them off and fill them up. For some reason, it's better on the boat than it is on some of the things we use around the house and the property.
Is the existing house a rental or what's the situation? I mean, you said it's gonna remain until the 5th and 6th buildings are built.
Yeah, I'm not sure if is it occupied.
I believe it's kind of, my father actually just went there. It's in pretty rough shape. So I believe the tenant was moving out, kind of not really salvageable anywhere.
Okay. I mean, because we want all this screening to be built, with the first building. So as long as if you're planning on leaving the house, as long as you can build, the fence and the perimeter landscaping and leave the house, if that's your plan, that would be.
Yeah, we would build our compound immediately and get the tree growth started, because some of the things, I don't know if I have it, but I think we're renderings.
Yeah, on your variance.
Okay.
It's on the next part.
But yes, I think we need to establish the tree growth as early as possible.
Okay. Any other questions for the?
Just a quick thought, do the buildings have fire suppression?
No, they're not intended to have, and again, that's part of the state plan review, but we cannot build them over a certain square footage unless we do a sprinkler system, and I think that's about 10,000 square feet.
When would you start the construction?
Well, believe it or not, I think there's a meeting tomorrow with the vendor to supply the materials. And I think they would execute the contract as early as tomorrow if we're successful or not. That being said, I don't know, supply chain. I think that you want to get the buildings built yet this year, 2 of them.
Yeah, we're currently leasing space elsewhere and it would be a lot nicer to kind of have our future space, so as soon as possible as we can. Intention on tonight.
Any other questions?
Mr. Cox.
Yeah.
Mr. Gilman, you mentioned a variance.
That's his next one.
Okay.
He's got
Yeah.
two.
I just want to make sure we weren't anticipating that was tonight, but that'll be in the future, assuming.
No,
it's-
No, it's-
it's tonight. It's
it's
I'm
the
the
next
I'm the
item.
next one.
Oh, you're
on the
okay.
agenda. Yeah, I kind of ran them all together, and I apologize for that, but we have the conditional use and then we have the design standard variances for the materials.
No,
So that's his other.
Yeah. I was-
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we'll invite any public comment or online, if there's anybody here wish to speak on the matter with the conditional use. Okay, come on up to the podium and state your name.
I'm James Ruffey. I live at 6853 South State Road 13. I own the parcel just east of this parcel right here. There's a couple concerns that we have. First off, the surface water. I'm having issues right now with Nuco. They don't have a retention pond big enough for this room, let alone 12 acres of roof line and parking lot. I didn't catch what size buildings that they were going to put up,
60 by 160.
and there's 6 of them,
Correct.
and that's a lot of roof line for no place for the water to go. If it doesn't have a retention pond, somewhere for the water to go, it will cut and rut my field. The natural flow of the water already does that. So I have a concern about that. I understood the place would be fenced and with berms on
Yeah, that's
on the
yeah.
perimeters.
On the north and west. perimeter.
Will it be lit at night?
I can answer that if.
Yeah, if you want to answer. And do you have any other questions?
Yeah.
Just go ahead and let him finish and then he can answer.
That my understanding of the retention pond for commercial development is it has to have an outlet. And that allows the surface water off of the roof line and the parking lot to drain into the pond so that you don't get runoff into the creek. That land is landlocked. There's no direct access to the open ditch. So they'll have to work with adjoining landowners to get that access, which I think that can be done. So, but that's a big concern of mine because it is affecting the value of that partial east. Okay. Thank you.
If you want to address the lighting issue and then we can talk about, I have a couple thoughts on the drainage.
Yeah, I think, obviously with the nature of the boat storage, security is of utmost importance. There'll be security cameras, there'll be lights, but it's our intention that the lights would be down mounted and fully shielded, so it won't spill over into neighboring properties. So that will be part of our development plan. The fence will also be screened. It'll be sort of an opaque look to it. It won't be transparent, so you won't be able to see in or out of the compound. So we'll address those concerns as part of our development plan. As far as the drainage, he's exactly right. The drainage does need a positive outlet. We have a couple of options. We would like to work with the adjoiners to get to Turner Ditch directly that would be the most feasible. There is a possibility to stay in the right of way and run a subsurface drain down down the road 13 to Turner Ditch where it actually goes under. That's another option. But if in fact there is a situation where your outlet is not ideal, then the responsibility on our civil engineer is to oversize the pond. So we have plenty of land to make a pond bigger than what it may normally need to be with having a direct outlet, but in the absence of an ideal situation, our pond may be a lot bigger, so it can store more surface area and then evaporate, and then sometimes that is the only resolution.
And this would be his next step after this is going to be site development review. So all of those plans from your engineer would come through our technical review committee. And they would address issues with the stormwater, they would review, because if you're building something, if you have a property that you're developing, you can't negatively affect those around you with water issues. So that would be addressed if there were any. That, the engineer didn't come up with something sufficient, we would tell them so, and they would have to change it. And we do have the lighting standards as well, which the shielding meets the lighting standards that we have.
That answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie Schnapp, 427 East State Street. As a realtor, I feel for the farmers around it. And I'm not sure what the plan is to have commercial in the middle of our agriculture. I assume there's a reason that an out of area company is coming to our county to put their commercial in our agriculture area because our land is cheaper right now. And is that what we want? Agriculture, smack commercial right in the middle of it. It's going to affect all the farmers around it, their value, their resellability. If they wanted to sell to a neighborhood, they would not get the same value. So I do think it is going to affect the neighbors around it. I think we want to be cautious of just dropping commercial in the middle of agriculture.
What does the comp plan have for this area for use?
We don't, the I-69 plan doesn't.
No, the comp plan for future land use.
I'd have to look. Well, I think we discussed it.
Yeah, with the 13 tons.
Yeah, there's a lot of businesses
And
along
then
13.
because Newco is across the street, even though that's not Hamilton, we looked at what was in that area with the comprehensive plan. And I felt like I believe it fell within what the comprehensive plan.
There's the car auction.
Just keep that in mind. That's all I ask you. Keep it in mind, because if you were the farmer and that's going to affect their land.
We look at the
resell.
comprehensive plan every time now before decisions are made, now that that's in place, that guides us. I mean, it's our framework now. So decisions are really just guided. And it really makes everything very fluid and not hodgepodge. But I appreciate that.
That's my only input. Yeah.
It keeps us.
Yeah.
Yes, and I know when planning commission was reviewing this, you looked at surrounding uses
We
and below or south of this parcel is some pretty heavy business or industrial, that you would call it, areas.
Yeah, so
those-
just to review the comp plans, future land use map, this whole area is designated as business.
I think it's because of the proximity to 13 and the interchange exit
Yeah,
is probably why.
the proposed use for single families further east.
But still being cognizant of adding all that, the trees and things.
Yeah, and the fencing not just be opaque or chain link, it's gonna be something that really shields the the use and the use of the evergreen trees is a pretty prominent as far as. my
So is
map,
there a landscaping schedule that they're gonna follow, or I guess?
That'll be in site review, so we'll look at that then, but I think that you've made commitments to do the evergreen trees, or you were
Yeah.
describing the landscaping.
Yeah, we want to do something that provides year-round screening, so
Yeah.
the evergreens seem to be the most logical, maybe some earth mounding on 700 as well. But yes, we'll put in our planting schedule, species of trees, and a maintenance plan as part of our overall development.
Yeah, since this isn't actively staffed, I assume you have some kind of regular routine maintenance that you come out, clean debris that sticks to the,
Trees. and
yeah, and especially the fencing, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's not unsightly.
And I'm sure that any boat company, when they have their people come out, they're just not gonna abandon the site, they're gonna be out there on a regular basis. They wanna make sure that the fence is not in disrepair, everything's kept up and looking nice. But for right now, I don't think we're even proposing to put signage up.
So as far as my analysis goes, it's not really gonna put any undue strain on infrastructure. As far as public safety, it'll be fenced, gated, key card only, a way to get in. But I did note that the buffer from the roadway should meet or exceed standards, which it sounds like they already have plans to do so.
All right, well, I guess if there's no other comment, we can entertain a motion to adopt the findings of fact that are provided in the application. Oh, we have someone written. Oh,
What's the setback on the west side of their property? No, the east side. What would that setback be?
From your property, 30 feet.
And where was you gonna put the retention from?
It's going to be all the way in that panhandle down.
Yeah, there's not room down that area to put a pond and a building.
No, there's no building down there, just a
Yeah.
pond.
so there's a picture there in the
I'm
southeast.
not sure where.
That's kind of, that's southeast, and there's a barn there in the corner. So it's south and east of that barn on their property.
I'll share these drawings with you because I think you should have them.
That,
See the thing that looks like a kidney bean?
yeah,
That's sort of the detention area. And that's all the way at the very south end of your property.
that'd be to the east end of your property.
Yeah, the east panhandle, yes. But then if you go closer, as you get closer to 700, there's a 30-foot setback as well. All the way around.
On 700.
Oh, well, there's a 75-foot on 700. And then on the perimeter around the entire development, there's a 30.
And I believe the UDO requires a buffer between ag and business, so.
Yeah, if there's not one.
It's not
natural
depicted, but
tree
even
line.
on the east side of their drive, they'll have landscaping and some buffering there.
Because it'll be heavy business too. This is rural res.
Any other questions, comments?
On your comprehensive plan, you said something about residential. Where does, on your plan, stop? Going east off the 13.
It's like 3 miles east, I think. So
that's
everything south of 700 and east of 13 for 2 or 3 miles is designated as business on the comp plan.
So that could be.
I mean, that's just a general guideline for the types of developments that we would
So
see there.
that, my partial then isn't really necessarily designated residential.
I mean, it's zoned residential now, correct? But just looking at what future kinds of developments could go there, that doesn't mean it couldn't be developed as residential. but- Any other questions? All right, so we'll adopt the findings of fact that are presented.
Part of the motion to.
Yeah, so I'll entertain a motion to adopt the findings of fact and approve the conditional, this is just for the conditional use,
Correct.
not for the architectural.
Right.
I make a motion to adopt the finding of facts for the CU 0419 2022-02. The conditional use for indoor outdoor food storage at 8843 West 700 South.
Second, all right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to this third item, V 0419-2022-03 variance from architectural standards for indoor outdoor boat storage at 8843 West 700 South, Indy Boat Company via David.
Okay, in the new UDO, there are some design guidelines for architectural standards, building facade design, window requirements, building orientation, eaves, overhangs. And in our request for a very passive boat storage facility, we feel that a lot of the items that are in the architectural standards make sense if it's more of an office, a human occupied building, and not just a passive storage building. As mentioned earlier, we would prefer not to do the windows because for security reasons. And then also some of the state building code requirements. It makes more sense for us to get our S1 storage classification if it is all the same material that is used on the building. While we appreciate the design standards, we'd ask that this is more of an accessory use. It's not a revenue generator for Indy Boats. It's just part of the nature of their business to have a facility to store boats. If they were to come back and build their showroom facility, then absolutely, or the architectural standards would make sense to make that a place of business for employees. So we're asking that you grant us some relief on the materials that are required by the ordinance and some of the design standards that are required by the ordinance. And in an effort to be as compatible as possible with the surrounding uses, we have designed it to be color friendly, dense landscaping, and try to make it where it would have the least impact on any visible bypasser on 700 or the State Road 13 by being behind dense landscaping. The use will be screened, designed to fit with the area as part of our findings. Again, will be heavily landscaped, earth tone colors, only employees will have access to the site. The storage use would not be hazardous or disturbing to the neighbors. It won't create traffic and cause noise or any heat or glare. We do have adequate utilities 700 feet from the site. In this instance, there will be no utilities needed other than electricity. Obviously, there'll be no impact on the school system, and we do have adequate access to a public road. And for those reasons, we think that we meet the findings for relief to some of the material requirements that is stipulated in the UDO for the types of use that we're proposing. And we would ask that you consider our variance request and by reference incorporate our findings of fact. And I'd be happy to answer questions that board members have for me.
What eve size are you proposing?
I think a foot overhang. I think it's a foot versus 3 foot.
Okay.
Ordinance requires a 3 foot
Yeah.
overhang, which is pretty substantial. I think we're right at a foot.
Okay,
And then there was the window requirements that we mentioned, the facade design on long facades, so longer than 60 feet has to be broken up with different materials or bump outs, things like that. So those 160-foot faces, I think, those will not be broken up as a long facade. The building finishes using the metal material and then the eaves.
any questions for the petitioner?
Just curious if you've figured out how much it would affect you cost-wise to comply with the standards versus what you have here.
I don't even think they couldn't do it, is my understanding.
Probably have to go elsewhere.
And what I did is I shared with them the materials, block, brick, tilt-top panels, cement panels, and there's a threshold where they make sense, but on a 60 by 160, it just doesn't make sense, and it's not in their business plan to do one great big large building. Because they really don't know how much storage needs they're gonna have, and that's why we want to do it in 6 phases or 3 phases to build small but not overbuild, and then have something very large out there that is not feasible for their use, and it ends up vacant. So we were hoping that we would approach this the smart way. And again, when I did propose to their contractors to bid it, the prices were pretty substantially different for brick, block, window overhangs, things like that. You couldn't have the doors in certain directions. Unfortunately, it's not a business, 9 to 5 business, it's just a storage business, so very passive.
Thank you.
Do you have any public comment? Anybody online? Okay. I will entertain a motion to adopt the findings of fact and approve the variances, the building orientation, no windows, 160-foot unbroken facade, standing seam metal, and then 12-inch eaves.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion, including adopting the findings. Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right,
Thank you very much.
thanks. All right, next item of business, condemnation hearing for 116 to 120 West State Street.
Right. Do you want to open this first, or we'll describe it
We
first?
can just describe it. Yeah, we can do that.
You need to do this.
Motion to suspend the meeting and open the hearing into the condemnation.
Okay, I will call for a motion to suspend the regular meeting and convene the hearing. Do I have a motion? Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Do we vote or
Yes.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
All right, so this is the buildings at 116 through 120 West State Street, owned by Mr. Steve Busey. The town found that these buildings were in violation of the unsafe building law, which is 155.02, specifically section 155.02-06, minimal standards for building condition or maintenance. In the following areas, I won't read them all to you, but they are sections 4, 6, 7, 8, 12, and 15. If you'd like to read those, they are in the presentation. This building had an engineering report done in 2019 that found a lot of issues with the building that needed to be addressed before the coming winter. It was done in July of 2019. In October of 2021, the building inspector, myself, the town manager, and the assistant fire chief did a walkthrough inspection of the building. We took a lot of pictures, and we found that the pictures showed that none of the issues had been addressed before the winter of 2019, and in some cases it had gotten worse. So in March of this year, we sent out a condemnation order. So you can see in the pictures there, kind of some before and afters in the presentation of decayed windows, bound supports, holes in the roof and floor. There's evidence of pests, animal pests. as well as evidence of an unsealed building. There's a lot of dampness. So at this time, if you have questions, the building inspector is here. If you want to go up and briefly talk about it, as well as Jay Gardner, the assistant fire chief who is with us.
So, as Hannah Rose was explaining, when we did our safety inspection, we wasn't, or actually, I mean, it's more of a safety assessment than an inspection. We were not there to inspect the building. We're there to compare what the report that was done in 19 as to what we could see with our own eyes. We wasn't looking for new damage. We were just trying to compare the pictures that was taken in 19 as to what we saw in October. And I should mention, just as the report had mentioned and had documented very well, the same issues continued. Let me grab this. One of the sections in the report that is extremely important to me and as well as everybody else, I believe, is their conclusion that basically said that at the time, they didn't feel that it was imminent danger of anybody because there was no occupants below. I think that was a mistake at the time because I think the vape shop and H&R Block has been there for a long time. My taxes have been done in H&R Block, but it's a long time before this report was done. So, but since there were occupants occupying spaces underneath, I think it is an imminent danger for anybody in the public to go in that building. When we did our safety assessment, we've even talked to Mr. Busey about possible grant monies that were available to him. And if you want to come down, we could help him walk through the process. And yeah, he wasn't interested in that. So again, we wasn't looking for new things. We understand a tornado went through town. All the stuff that we documented in our pictures was in correlation with this report that you all have on your iPads. He did not have a report when we did our safety inspection. I gave Mr. Busey a copy of this very thing. So, and then ironically, I believe it's Monday of this week, clerk treasurer of the town came in first thing in the morning, interrupted the meeting we were in, and he was nearly hit by some debris coming off Mr. Busey's building. He did not know any part of this meeting was going to happen this week. He's been in Florida out of town. So it's just ironic that those things happen. And as a building inspector, I don't want to be on the news some night when something drastically happens and then say, well, how long have we known about this? I think it needs to be taken care of. I think it's to the point where it's been like this for a long time. I was on the fire department here in town for a long time. We've done about, not only this building, there's other buildings. This is just the first one of some that we're gonna get fixed. So I believe this is a good place to start us in. So.
Jake, do you have anything to add about fire safety issues? Or?
So the requested relief is to repair the items identified in the engineering report.
And today is is an actual hearing into the building inspector's order of December 31st, 2022. It's in front of you. And this is almost like a mini trial. And so, excuse me. Yeah, it says March 31st. March 31st. I said December. March 31st, 2022. Is the owner here? Yeah, Bryce, you represent.
Yes.
Okay, and he's entitled to present evidence as well. We kind of just treat this as a mini trial. At this point, I think it would be appropriate for anybody on the board to ask questions of any of the witnesses that have already spoken about the testimony or the evidence that's put in front of you. And then after that, I think it would be appropriate for Bryce to get an opportunity if he would like to cross-examine the town's witnesses.
I have a lot of questions. Just lot of holes here, so someone might want to take some notes. Finding of facts, the things that are missing. Basically, what prompted this 2019 letter from the professional engineer, and whatever prompted that, is there any document? I don't want to answer it yet, because I have a whole list.
Okay.
Whatever prompted that, where's the documentation? Based on that, in this PE's review, I know we've talked about what's being ordered, but he's not it's really more of a, his professional recommendation. So I would call it his recommendation. The town is the ordering body. So I would like to see the documentation from the town as the ordering body based on the PE's report. Then, let's see, any resolution from this report, follow up on all those things as far as communications, phone calls, follow up from the town staff at the time after 2019, as far as did they follow up? Where is he at in the process? And then based on that, if he wasn't, did we send any formal letters? I think that's it.
I can certainly address a few of them. I don't know if I can address them all. Great questions. I had a lot of the same questions as you. As far as what prompted this initial inspection, we will say that that was done in 2019, and that was a previous administration, a previous planning director, inspector, the whole gambit. What they did or didn't do, I can't speak on their behalf. I do know what prompted the initial inspection was. Mr. Busey has asked our town electrical department to run a new service to the back of this building. He had set up a new riser pole on the back of this building. And when the electrical company got there, they looked at it and they said, no, that it was not to any standards. It was a danger, and according to the electrical foreman now, Craig Switzer, who's I got the information from, he come back and told his immediate supervisor that he did not feel comfortable doing that, and if they wanted to do it, but Craig wasn't able to at the time. So that's what, once Craig had seen that part of the building and told his immediate supervisor, that's what prompted the inspection, according to Craig. Again, as far as follow-up from 19 and what happened to when I was hired, I can't speak for that administrator. I don't know. I've not seen any files, anything, letters or anything of that nature that knows that they had spoken to Mr. Busey or anything of that nature. So
What was the approximate date, Mr. Mayford, when they were gonna go out and put in new electrical service? What's the time period on that? They wouldn't do it?
it was prior to the report that the PE's report their side was, I don't know. I didn't have.
So several years?
No, I think it was within just within those few months or whatever, maybe even that
Within a
same
few
week, I
months.
don't know.
Okay.
No, I think that once he determined that Hyman wasn't gonna hook up new service in the back of the building because of unsafe conditions, I think that's what prompted that administration to looking to get the survey done.
So that was recent within at the time period.
It would be a speculation, I don't know.
Okay.
And maybe Mr. Busey could answer that question.
Sure. These were all for you necessarily.
Yeah.
It was just my timeline.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely, yep.
So I guess, so he was given a copy of this report in 2019 and told to make these repairs, or?
We know that my
We don't know.
understanding, I asked Mr. Busey when we did the walkthrough in October, if he had seen a copy of that, he said no, and I. Well, here you might as well have it, I mean, it's your building, and I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not, but I felt like we owed him that, you know, here's what the PD said,
Sure.
so.
So you did give him a copy of that in October?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and, you know, and we had talked, it started out kind of bumpy, but as time went by that day, it got better and he answered all of our questions and, you know, let's go through all the building. The things that we just pointed out as like the curtains in the front still blowing in the wind. You know, like that lets water into your building when it rains, holes in your roof. The picture showing all the algae and stuff, that doesn't happen overnight. The boards are rotting in two. The animal feces, like the wiring, electrical open box in the wiring. Just it's, and we went there, you know, we didn't do an inspection. We were just basically comparing. We can, you know, it's just, you can see the pictures and maybe he has an explanation that.
In your professional opinions, do you think that building is unsafe?
Absolutely, 100%. And I know, talking with the assistant fire chief, our both retired firemen, if that building catches on fire today, they're not going inside that building. Period. There's too many holes in the floor. The upstairs is too unsafe to send a couple of guys or a guy, any person up there. And the fear, these buildings don't just burn one little section. If the building is the buildings next to them, if it collapses, you get a pancake effect, essentially. So
My fear is if that building catches on fire, it's gonna take several other buildings close.
we've seen enough on other communities. These old buildings are, this building is not perfect, it's great, but it's safe. There are some things that you can fix windows. You can fix holes in the roof where it rains, it doesn't leak on the floor. There's a fire door, like a dumbwaiter up at the top. That is designed that it's got a fusible link that has a fire there, slam shut. Fire stop. That doesn't work anymore. There's man-made, unengineered sections of what I would call firewall. That's been breached that you can walk through now. So it's a danger. I mean, it has been for a long time.
Members have questions for staff?
I do have one comment. I spoke to my predecessor and the building inspector at the time did send a list of repairing the roof and leaking and the major issues that were in this report and got no response. So that, and it might take some digging, but we would have documentation of that somewhere
In 2019. that
in
was sent.
2019.
Okay.
Yes.
You said you could produce that?
I have a question for the assistant fire chief.
Yes, sir.
I assume you've been all through that building.
Yes, I was with the town when we went back in October.
With that being said, in your professional opinion, is that building unsafe?
Yes, sir. I could not send a firefighter into that building safely knowing that they come back out with fire. As you know, with your history in the fire service, that building burns upstairs. I don't know if they have a picture of it, but between that building and the building next to it, there's a piece of wood, OSB. That's all there is from one building to the next building.
It's not true.
It was true in October. There was a piece of OSB I could see onto the other side into another building that looked like it's possibly an upstairs apartment. But I can tell you, the Pendleton Fire Department, speaking on behalf of Fire Chief, that building will catch on fire tonight. There is no Pendleton firefighter entering that structure. Under my command or under the other fire chief's commands. I go into those guys. It's hard to explain to someone's family that we let a crew die on a building that's about to fall in on itself already.
And there are 300 pictures of documentation in that G drive. You have a link to it. It might take some going through, but I believe I know which picture you're talking about with that.
Yeah, it would have been the top floor, west end. There was an open, like, older doorway that was probably from the 1800s that's been blocked with a sheet of wood. They could easily pull back and see into the next building and park in in October. And my first thought was even just a small fire could easily be in the residential area within minutes by the time we're even notified. So is there any other questions for fire service side of things?
No, it's not really in your wheelhouse, but was any kind of environmental testing done in there with black mold or anything else?
That would be it. Not for me, but yeah.
Do you have anything else before?
I guess we can go ahead and allow the owner to work again.
Bryce, or you and your client, would you like to ask any questions of the three folks that?
If I may ask just a handful of questions before we do anything else. My name is Bryce Owens. I'm an attorney here in town. My office is within the block here at 119 North Pendleton Avenue. I'm here with Steve Lucy in response to the situation here by Florida. My first couple of questions, I go to the Mr. Gardner. Mayor, I'm so sorry. I've been called worse. Well, I saw that it said plain different, I misunderstood. Okay. Did I understand you correctly that while this professional engineer report was done in the summer of 19, that apparently it wasn't shared with Mr. Boosie until October of 2021?
And Brett, we need to make a record of this, so if you could either speak at the Bryce's as much as there or.
Is that it? That,
Chair over here for us.
repeat your question again?
Is it your understanding that while the professional engineer did his report in July of 2019, that it was not shared with Mr. Boosie until October of 2021?
I asked Mr. Boosie if he'd seen a copy of that report, and he indicated he had not. That's when I gave it to him.
Not right then.
At your building when we did our.
You didn't have it with you. You had to come down and get it or something.
Let me do my job. Do you have any information from the town's perspective that would indicate that the report was ever provided to Mr. Boosie before October of 2021?
No, I don't.
There you go. If I'm not told, how am I supposed to fix it?
Have you read the report yourself?
I have.
So the professional engineer that was hired by the town who did this detailed inspection, on the front page of their report, they go through a variety of things which show some deficiencies. They say beyond that, it's our opinion at this time, there is no evidence to indicate any portion of the building is in imminent danger of collapse and would therefore pose a threat to public safety. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Do you have any professional engineer since this inspection who has ever provided you with any different summary of the condition of the building?
No.
So the town's engineer has done a detailed inspection and issued their official opinion that while the building needs work, it does not actually rise to the level of being a danger to the town. Is that correct?
That's what part of this says. You are partially correct in your what you're saying, yes.
So I'm not going to take the time to go through the entire report because we don't have that time, but the report is in the record so the board can review it. The very first page of pictures on photo 2, it says cracking in the plaster that's intersecting the crosswalk indicates our movement of the masonry of the roof level.
This is not unusual for a building of this age, nor should it be considered dangerous. Are you aware of that, sir?
Yeah, I can read that.
So some people would say there's various deficiencies and things about the building that may not be pretty, but when you come right down to it, what exactly is it that you were saying is so dangerous that the building needs to be condemned today, when your own engineer says that it's not?
I've got your answer here, just a second. And you were partially right on your report, but you also know in that report, it says that they did not do a detailed inspection. Are you aware of that? I think the word they used was an assessment of the building and not an inspection. Nor did they say a detailed inspection. Also,
I'm not quibbling over the verbiage. I said they've got 50 pages by the professional engineer who says it's not unsafe.
May I?
And my question to you, sir, is do you have anything that says that it is unsafe?
Yeah, on here, this is, when we read it verbatim. This is from the PE's report, it says there's no question that each of the 4 structures is in repair. A heavy wet snow could cause further failure of the roof members in each of them. We strongly recommend that these areas be addressed before winter comes.
Which I wasn't told
That was, okay.
for 30 years.
But as to whether these conditions pose a reasonable threat to the public, I would have to say no, because the space below is unoccupied, therefore likely falling on somebody. Is minimal. If you will read their conclusion. Find it. Right. I had mine all highlighted slide, but I took my book apart and I can't find it, so. When they mentioned the fact that the bottom areas were unoccupied and now they are occupied, I think that poses a risk to the public.
They've always been occupied.
Sir, he's answering the questions. You'll get the opportunity through your counsel.
I don't
Please,
like
please
why.
don't, please don't
If it's not
interrupt.
why, I'm gonna interrupt.
See, there'll be an opportunity for you to speak. This is not it.
So,
So you're saying your engineer missed the fact that the building was occupied by an H&R Block office?
yeah, it wasn't my engineer, but yes, the
The town
engineer
engineer.
that did their report in 19, that is correct.
And all of the staff involved in this process at that time have, none of them are in the positions with the town.
That is correct.
And in fact, we've gone through several changes of various positions that were involved. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So would you agree with me that the town's professional engineer who did the inspection, besides finding the building was not unsafe, also identified a number of elements which probably need attention and repair, but do not rise to the level of being a safety issue?
I'm sorry, repeat that. I was trying to find the answer to one of your questions.
Would you agree with me that the town's engineer in the report, besides identifying that the building was not unsafe, they also identified a number of elements of the building which, while they were not unsafe, they were in need of repair?
I don't know if I totally agree with you stating that they said this building was not completely safe.
I assume that the board has a copy of the report.
Under the conclusions, the first
The
sentence.
language in the report speaks for itself. So I'll take a moment and just ask you, on the front page of the engineer's report, it says there are other elements of the building in need of repair. These include loose sheet metal, roofing and siding, and isolated loose areas of masonry. Loose sheet metal should be refastened. Unstable masonry can be repointed. Would you agree with me that those are not
maintenance deficiencies that give rise to the building being unsafe or being the basis of an order of condemnation? So yes or no question?
No. Can I answer a question you had a couple minutes ago?
If I ask what you can. Yeah, I'd like to show you, if I may, what is titled order of condemnation or demolition. And it has a typewritten date of March 21st.
That's correct.
And it's dated from the top, March 28. You don't know what that date is.
Yeah,
Or the date we sent it out.
that's correct.
Would that be the date that you said it to Mr. Boosie?
And they want that financial.
And so on the copy that Mr. Boosie received, can you tell me what the date is that he was supposed to do something by?
I'm going to assume that those original copies that was dated.
So the copy provided Mr. Boosie is blank, gives him to do something by a certain
Is this
date.
the wrong?
No, we did not put in a date here because that's for the UGA to decide, correct?
Can't be.
So your letter to him does not give him any deadline to do
No,
anything.
that's what my understanding is tonight, that their job is going to be a time.
So then in the lower section where you said that you considered unsafe and you have 6 different categories,
That's correct.
which one did you indicate that you thought was unsafe?
I believe that it is an impaired structure that makes it unsafe for a person to property. I believe all of them.
It says check all that apply. Did you check any of the 1 through 6 that you were to check to give this man fair notice of what it is he was supposed to do?
No.
You didn't check any of them and you didn't fill in a date. Is that right?
That's correct.
Is this document, which is not checked anything wrong with his building, is it the most formal thing that you have given to him, asking him to do something with the condition of his building?
I'm assuming yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm not asking you to
I'm not-
assume anything. Is this the most specific piece of information that you have officially given to him about what he needs to do?
I don't believe that tells him what he needs to do. I believe that document that you're holding tells him where the deficiencies are while we deem that building as unsafe.
Is that the same copy we have on the drive?
It doesn't appear.
That doesn't say that he needs to fix his roof, and it doesn't say he needs to fix his window. That does not say what he needs to do to his building. That document there is stating.
Is there anybody from the town staff who would disagree with the fact that the copy that I have in my hand that was given to Mr. Boosie is in fact the only copy that was given to him?
That's what was signed for.
Did the town keep a copy of what was sent to him?
Yeah, that has X's on the first 5 rows.
Okay,
There's also a date on it. Does yours have a date on this?
so
On the second.
may I approach the board for a moment? Mr. Boosie received this useless notice with no date and nothing to do. Yes. No deadline. Nothing indicated that anything was done.
Bryce, is your second page say April 15th on the second paragraph?
Yes, the above ordered actions must be completed. The above order referring back to this blank list of nothing.
But it also says right above that, Bryce, repair or rehabilitation of any unsafe building, bring it into compliance with standards for building condition or maintenance required for human habitation, occupancy or use by statute or rule under 422(2).
That's the ordered action, that quote.
May I ask Mr. Boosie a few questions?
Was any clarification on this letter received asked? No. Once,
I can represent that just a few days ago, Mr. Boosie brought this into me asking me what it meant. And I had to say, it doesn't mean anything. We need to come here so that the board can take a good look at this and figure out what it is we need to do.
I think you've heard that he's been entirely cooperative. He's allowed the inspection by the engineer. He's allowed the walkthroughs by the representatives of the fire department. He's been cooperative. He's not an engineer himself. He doesn't know how to correct something if nobody will tell him what's wrong.
But if he received it in October and he just brought it to you a few days ago, why did he?
I'm talking about the letter. The letter that was sent out at the end of March came to me in April.
So the report was given to him in October. So,
There could be perhaps disagreement about what the report says, but as I read the report, it complains about deferred maintenance, but it says the building is safe. It's not on the verge of collapse, it's not unsafe.
It does specify repairs that they recommend to be done before winter
I just got it,
in October.
right. And what did I tell them? Am I, you want me to talk or not?
Bryce, you done with Cross on these folks, or
I think so.
I'd like to just a little rebuttal before Bryce presents his case in chief. I know it's informal, but you're not used to it, but Brett, on this, the condition of the building, ignoring that if the engineering report does not exist, in your opinion as the building inspector commissioner here in Pendleton, is the building unsafe and why?
The building is unsafe. The fact that there are holes in the roof. Currently, we use the fire department's drone to document that. Water has gotten onto the second floor of the building. There are multiple holes or boards missing out of that second floor. There are holes. The electrical wiring is running up just through the ceiling without being in conduit or anything of that nature. There are electric wires hanging out of junction boxes, and
A missing cover, big deal.
there are animals that have eaten,
Cover.
chewed on wire. Okay. There are animal feces. The building next door to him had a,
This building,
We need to not interrupt. It's a
I'm sorry.
proceeding. Thank
I
you.
just don't like it when lies are told.
the
But
building
you
next
have
door
your
had
time to
a
speak. Thank you.
large raccoon fall through the ceiling. Speculation, but when his building is open to the elements and any animal could just go into the upper floor of his building, it's not secure. This is unsafe.
When did you, I'm sorry. go ahead.
No, it is, the pictures, not only in the engineer's report, but the ones that we supplied online. There's multiple problems, holes, structural members that are bowed, sagging, missing, that makes that building unsafe.
Brett, again, referring to the engineering report, 2019. You're comparing the pictures of 2022 to 2019, and your opinion as the building inspector has deteriorated. Describe for the board and for me and for the owner and for Bryce, what has happened between 2019 and 2020? Is there evidence of deterioration?
Well, to answer your question fairly, it's not gotten any better. To look at it in a picture to determine if it has gotten worse, I don't know.
Okay.
I can't imagine it gotten any better if things weren't fixed.
Pass the witness, Bryce.
Mr. Mabry, would you agree with me that it took you about a minute to summarize your current opinion about what he's done?
Yes, sure.
Can you explain
No.
why before we got to this stage, you didn't share that information with Mr. Boosie?
That is not correct.
Do you have a document where you
I
shared
gave
with
him a
him?
copy of this report. And
You're talking about,
over there, when we did our walkthrough, I explained to him about the broken glass and we talked about several, four of us talked about several different things in the building as we were walking through there. The drapes
blowing in the wind.
So if there's a
The-
break blowing in the wind,
The no roof on the back, Bryce, you know, you own the building next door, you know what I'm talking about. He let us use your building to take pictures of his building from the ceiling. So we walked up the firewalk, said, take as many pictures as you need. So it is.
what were you answering to what questions?
uh,
So let's take a broken window, for example. Is it unsightly?
Absolutely,
Is it unsafe?
absolutely.
Why is a broken window unsafe to the point of condemning a building?
It can fall on the sidewalk and.
It's already going, how's it gonna fall?
Are you aware that there's been an attempt to make repairs which were stopped by the town?
I do know, that reading this report, that some repairs have been attempted not to. Well, I'm gonna stop there. I do know by reading this report and seeing with my own eyes that some type of repairs have been attempted, yes.
So do you believe that from a building inspector standpoint, it creates an unsafe condition if there is an electrical line that is not live, that's not in a conduit running to an unoccupied part of the building?
That's not a hazard.
What exactly is it that you are asking to be done with this building to make it safe today?
My opinion, or you want her to answer? She's.
You're the building inspector, is that right?
It's brought up to
Yeah.
repairs and brought up to code.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. It needs to be brought up to habitable condition.
I'm
Based
asking
on,
for a specific bullet point list of what it is this man is supposed to do to make himself in compliant with your opinion about the safety of the building for the public.
Required.
this report.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is our position that we would like for that building to, we like an engineering firm and it doesn't have to be this one per se. He can choose who he wants to go through that building and tell us that it's safe to be habitable.
You already did.
But your report for 2019 says the building is safe.
It would save if there was no occupants underneath. So. Say that.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I have to. Because he doesn't necessarily know everything that transpired.
Those are all the questions I have for the staff. I may ask Mr. Boozy a few questions.
Just a quick rebuttal, Bryce, I'm sorry. As Hannah Rose, as the planning director of the town, one of the questions, and quite rightfully asked, is that what should be done to the property to get it in compliance, that it's no longer subject to an order of this type? Can you address that?
Yes, so the items listed in this engineer's report should be addressed. And I mean, they have the bullet points in here for you. Also, this report is based on structural issues. It does not assess the fire issues, and that is where Brett's expertise can come in. So it does violate, and Jake as well, it does violate safety codes in a fire safety sense. So even if and I imagine when it's brought up to structural standards that, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would alleviate some of the fire issues within it.
Yeah.
Okay, but possibly not all of them. There might be a separate list of things to bring it into fire compliance. Okay. But that was all. I wanted to-
Okay, Bryce.
That's all.
So just as an example, go into photo 2 at the beginning of the report, when it says this is not unusual and should not be considered dangerous. What exactly is Mr. Booth supposed to do about the crack in the plaster that shows movement?
Well, if that's not listed as, may I answer? Or is
Yeah,
that
you asked,
separate?
yeah.
Oh, okay. If that's more of an aesthetic, and wouldn't be considered a structural issue, then I'm not sure it would need to be addressed, and I don't believe that that is part of the bullet points that say these areas should be addressed before winter. That might just be an additional notice on the part of the engineer that it could potentially cause issues in the future.
I can answer that.
Okay.
So cracked plaster is usually an indication that there's structural compromise. That's why it was noted in that report.
Well, allowed to speak? That crack's been there for 30 years.
No, it's the note, it was noted, if I could. A lot of times, because you can't see what's behind a wall with the plaster, engineers will note anytime there's cracks in plaster, especially if they're at a 45-degree angle, because that indicates that behind it where the structural members are, that structural member has been compromised.
And when the building's 100 years old, you don't think it's gonna have a crack in the
So
plaster?
if you go through some of the pictures, can you scroll through some of these pictures? So if you go to the outside, start with the outside of the building, go to the one where it shows the window. You can look at the top there. That's a corbel arch. And those bricks have to be squeezed together to maintain the structural integrity of that wall. Those have been compromised for a long time. So that's an example of what an engineer would look for structural compromise. That alone is enough, just that one window to condemn that building. Because that whole wall could come down. Let's scroll down.
And is there any people under that?
Well, the town clerk almost got hit by one of your.
What, she wasn't supposed to be in there?
No, when they were walking on the public street. If you can see here, these are structural members that have been compromised. If you go to the lower left, you can see rotting wood. Those members that are dark have no structural capability at this time. It also indicates holes in the roof, so the decay will continue as elements strike those members. If you look in the upper right, believe it or not, mold can be very damaging to a masonry wall. It eats away the mortar. So I would guess that anybody of any structural education would conclude 100% that structure, that masonry wall has been fully compromised. I want to scroll down some more. More indication of members, the one on the upper right, that's a rafter that's obviously fully compromised. I'm surprised it's even holding itself up.
If that fell down, what would it do?
I can take the rest of the building with it.
No, it can't. It's back there in the garage.
So if we go
No
on
people.
to the lower photos, you can see some more structural compromise. Archie talking about holes in the floors. There's a good example of that. The one on the left shows light coming through, more indication of structural compromise. If you'd like to scroll, is there any more photos? Here that indicates windows, simple repairs that can protect the structural members. And as you can see, no effort is done. What Brett is referencing, the curtains blowing in the wind is just an indication that they're not doing the most basic of repairs to protect the structural members. That curtain is representative of the lack of willing of the owner to even do the most basic repairs. You can see the masonry wall on the right, indication of more structural compromise. So these are mostly structural evidence. Oh, the window. Here's a good one. Right there in the middle on the top, the window frame fully open. Right below that, I believe, is the public street.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
That's on the back.
It's 50 feet to the alley.
So,
I go in
his
tomorrow.
tenants, well, that's fine. The tenants in the back, if they're to go to
Is
the
there one
car,
back there?
if they're to ever go to the car or whatever, that frame is ready to come out. Is there any more? So, okay.
Same pictures.
Okay. Is there any more? Is that the last page? So anyway, we could go through the other 300 photos, but those are the structural problems. Another one that I remember that I think is in itself is between, there's a wall, a common wall between the building where looks like somebody tried to create a doorway. And that's a masonry wall that's been fully compromised, at least 8 feet by 4 feet. And you cannot do that with a brick wall without putting a header and a frame on it. So those are just probably not even 10% of the structural issues. Many of what I mentioned alone are enough to condemn the building. I'm not going to go into the fire code issues. There were numerous of those, and a lot of them are in parallel or with the fire code. Poles and walls that are intended to be fire stops that are fully compromised with poles. Masonry eaten away over the years and not repaired. So I think this engineering report, from my standpoint as town manager, just indicates there's been no change in the building for the last roughly 3 years. No basic maintenance that any responsible homeowner, business owner, or building owner should do.
Take further cross price.
Across for this rescue. Mr. Boosie, would you state your name for the record, please?
Stephen Busey.
Have you done the best you could to cooperate with the various representatives of the town over the past few years with respect to their wanting to take a look at various parts of your building?
I'd say 99%, but during at least one of the inspections, I did not like the fact that they wanted to bring in a bunch of people in there and inspect my building that had nothing to do with it.
This past fall, were you at last provided with a copy of the engineering report commissioned by the town in December of 19?
Yeah, more than 2.5 years after the town got it, they gave it to me.
And this report, I guess we've sparred a little bit over the language, that the report says that your building is not unsafe. Is that correct?
Yeah, it says it right there. It's not unsafe.
Now, we've heard from various town staff persons now that they disagree with their own engineer. They think it is unsafe. We've heard that.
Yeah, I was ready to speak up, but you told me not to.
So just within the last few weeks, you received this order of condemnation issued by the town of Pendleton, which says that you will, by some blank date, do unknown things to your building. Is that right?
Yes, Bryce, that's correct.
So, and while people may disagree about lots of the things in the report, when it comes right down to it, it says it's a ugly, unkempt building, but it's not unsafe.
That's what it says. And I want to point out, and you might get mad at me, I intend to do a lot of these repairs, but that report gave me 2 weeks. You can't even hire somebody in 2 weeks, which it wasn't even checked off anyway. I'm willing to cooperate, and condemnation's ridiculous.
And the town has talked about the bullet points on this report, but the bullet points are all just observations. The conclusion of the report doesn't, I mean, the board could read the conclusion of the report, it doesn't actually say to do anything. It says the building needs upkeep, but it's not unsafe.
That's the way I read
And
it.
so now the town staff is here asking this board to order the building condemned because they disagree with their own engineer's report.
I need to point out, and there again, you might not like it, but this all goes back to a lot of politics in this town. None of these people, you say none of these people were here back then? I mean, there was this,
The building inspector, the planning department, none of the people who were involved in the summer of 19 are still here. So we have all new people. There's been a complete turnover in these things, and they have no explanation of why this report in the summer of 19 was not shared until winter was upon us this past season. Now, what is the nature of what you do for a living, sir? What do you do?
oh, I'm not sure how you want me to
Well,
answer that.
do you run
I'm
the
an
HR block?
HR block office.
Okay.
I'm also retired from General Motors.
Okay.
I also have a
Yes.
mobile home park of various rental properties around.
Is
Anderson.
your H&R Block business largely seasonal in nature?
Absolutely. And
So-
I told.
So between the time that you received this order of condemnation and April the 18th, did you have any opportunity, any time to do anything about any of this?
Correct, and I told this
When
gentleman
were federal taxes due this year? When was?
yesterday.
So between the time that this order was handed to you and April the 18th, was that the busiest time of the year for you?
Absolutely, and very little income at the time I got that report back in December to initiate any of these repairs. I think I told this gentleman here that I would do them this spring. So I was totally shocked when all of a sudden they want to condemn it and not even give me a chance to do it.
So was it your plan to take the revenue from the H&R Block franchise and
Yes.
use that to make repairs to the building after April the 18th, when the deadline passed for most people?
Yes, yesterday.
So are you asking that the board overrule the order of condemnation and give you an opportunity to
Exactly.
correct the deficiencies with the safety
Exactly.
aspect of the building?
If they give me the time to do it, there won't be a problem. Even less politics enter into it again because
Has COVID affected the ability of business people to hire contractors and workers to do that?
absolutely, last year it took me almost 6 months to get an electrician for something I needed done somewhere else. They don't want to work. They didn't want to work during the pandemic, for sure.
When we asked the town for a bullet list of the things that they said were unsafe, they talked about electrical wires up in the upper part of the building that were not conduit. Is it your testimony that those are not live circuits?
Probably over 10 years ago, I went up there and spent many, many days removing all the wiring that was old wiring and killing the wires that didn't need to be there. And, you know, yeah, there's some wires still up there, but if they're not live, they're certainly not hurting anything.
So that the building
He
inspector,
did say that there is a cover missing off of the going up to the air conditioner up there. It's the 25 cents at Lowe's to put a new cover on there.
to your knowledge, that's the only place where there is live wires that are not properly covered.
There may be one other spot, but not to my knowledge, there's any other live wires, because I went up there and spent many days killing everything. Me personally.
Before we came into this meeting, had anybody from the town ever said anything to you about their speculation about a raccoon?
I think you mentioned it at the, when, under the Walter. But I don't think there's any raccoons upstairs. They probably got in the garage, but not upstairs. And this, there is, around that window, that's all happened in the last 6 months to where I haven't had a chance to repair it.
So he testified that there are some holes in the floor on the second floor. Are you aware of those?
Okay, it's
Are-
true,
Are you aware of it?
yes.
Is that part of what you were planning on fixing?
Actually, until the fire department pointed out that a fireman would trip, I probably wasn't, because a missing floorboard doesn't really hurt anything other than it's a trip hazard if there was a fire and a fireman might trip over it. So I will fix it if necessary, but it's
What's the situation with the roof on the building in the front part?
in the front part. That was all replaced shortly after the tornado, except there's still one hole that needs patched. Because the guys that did the roof said, I'm not patching that, it wasn't part of the tornado. So I have to hire someone separate to do that.
Did you try to make some repairs on the back part of the building and if the town then stopped you from making those repairs?
Masonry repair?
Any kind of repairs?
Oh, yeah, I was told I used the wrong kind of glass when I replaced a window in the garage. I think it was the Historical Society, maybe. They said it's gotta be an old glass instead of a brand new piece from Lowe's. I think it was Herbert, I'm not positive.
So you,
No.
Sorry.
all new people,
I'll
all new people. So you have made efforts to make repairs and you have been stymied in those by resistance and staff persons from the town who are no longer here. Is that fair?
Yes.
And now that you've passed through the busy part of your season, you have the revenue so you can approach making these repairs.
Absolutely.
And even though we've asked on multiple occasions, nobody has yet given you an actual list of what needs done. They've just pointed back to the report that says you're. Is that right?
Correct.
I-
I'm here to cooperate. It may not seem that way when I do an outburst, but it's because I don't like what's being said. And Jerry, you have a building right down from me. I promise you that if the town ever hits your building like they're hitting mine, you're gonna be very upset because they're.
You know what, though, the town approached me with a grant. And I worked with the town
They
to fix
didn't
up my
approach
building.
me with a grant.
Did the town approach you about a grant,
No.
possible monies? You had to kick in some money out of your own pocket, which I did too on my building.
Well, if they'll give me some grant money, let's go for
But
it.
it's never been mentioned to you about grant monies available to fix up your building.
My daughter, my wife passed away recently.
I'm sorry to hear that. So
Okay, and prior to that, my wife and daughter ran the H&R Block. And yes, at one point, someone a few years back said that there might be grant money available, but quite honestly, I didn't know how to do that. And you're more involved in all this stuff, so you knew probably what to do to get this grant money.
I didn't, but I found out.
Right. Well, I wasn't doing this. I have other things that I've been doing until I retired from General Motors.
Let me interject for a moment. When was it that your wife passed? I'm sorry.
It's been 8 months now that my wife passed away.
Sorry to hear.
Has that been another factor that's taking a while to get on your feet to get going?
Be careful, I trace that. What do you want to say?
No, that's fine. I don't have any other questions. Mr. Boosie.
May I
I'm here to
ask a
cooperate.
question? How long have you owned the building?
Probably over 30 years.
And you've made comments regarding, you did not have adequate time to make repairs because of being handed this report. But you were notified that there was a professional engineer in your building because you had to allow them to do that. Between that time of them going through your building and October of receiving this report, did you ask the town where they were at in the process of being completed with that?
When they did the engineering report in 19, I never got a copy of it.
I
So
know,
had
did you have
no idea.
communication about it,
Well, it
asking?
should be up to them to tell me what it said, not me to stir up the basket and say, what'd you guys find out?
Okay.
It should be up to them to tell me that they didn't like something.
And then you've said you didn't know what to repair, you weren't told, but visually, things that you could see, why haven't you repaired those things?
Well, for example, those missing glass, that piece of metal only blew off in the wind just in the last, I don't even know, 6
Which
months.
missing glass?
Yeah, on the back of the building, where
There's
that,
several missing glasses. Can you be
on the back
specific?
of the building, go to those frames and I'll
I
show
know,
you which one.
but there's several pieces. There's,
In the front of the building, there's one little 6x6 glass missing that he says the curtain's blowing in the
there's a
wind.
long frame of missing glass as well.
Yeah, that's the ones. I had a piece of metal over it. That only came off, I think it was after the tornado. I don't remember what year that was, but that's only been off a short time. And I didn't even know the broken glass there was because it was covered up with that piece of metal that blew off in the wind.
But as far as visually, the open holes, the black mold, some of those things, something that an owner of a property doesn't need to be told by any external entity, that you would know yourself to repair because you own a property. Why have you not repaired those up until this point?
Well, for one thing, they're in the back of the building where there's no people whatsoever at all,
What do-
ever.
What do people have to, you keep mentioning
Because he
people.
kept mentioning that it was a danger to the public. The alley is 75 feet away. If that roof caved in back there, yeah, it'd be my fault. But for not keeping up with the way maybe I should have.
Can you explain if a structure falls down, whether it injures a person or not, how that is or is not an issue?
It's my building. If I
Since
want to
it's-
let a garage roof cave in, wouldn't that be up to me?
But it's a commercial property and that has a different context to it than a personal property. Because
I don't know
there's
if
an
you,
alleyway.
I have a few other properties. And on some of them, if the garage roof fell down, it wouldn't upset me.
But these are adjacent to other properties that are owned
Nothing
by
that would
other.
fall on my building would affect his building on one side or his dad's building on the other side.
That is not true.
It's irrelevant on who owns it.
If that roof could come down and push into the building next door and push into Bryce's building. Structural.
You talking about right there by the metal stairway?
I'm talking about anywhere. It could go any direction if it falls. It can push in walls and take out the building next door, either way. It's a safety thing.
And I will get it. You just haven't even given me time. Some of this stuff just happened after the tornado.
I don't want anybody to get hurt, Steve.
Pardon?
I don't want anybody to get hurt,
I
seriously
don't
hurt,
either.
or
There's no
killed.
people back
For
there.
the record, we keep mentioning the tornado. Can we have the year of the tornado on record, please?
3 years ago on Memorial Day.
Memorial of 2019, if we could have that for record, please.
Right. And I didn't get the report till 2.5 years later.
So damage from tornadoes from 2019. That should be visual, correct? If things fell off during a tornado.
And it was addressed by me and the insurance company.
Regarding ownership of a commercial property, are you aware of your rights and your responsibilities as a commercial property owner?
Am I? I don't know. You're an attorney. Am I aware of my rights?
She's asking if you know.
Well, what are they then? I guess maybe I'm not.
That's not for me to recite to you. I'm asking if you're aware.
Me?
I mean, you're a purchaser and an owner of a commercial property.
Yeah, I've got other commercial buildings also. And as far as I know, you should maintain them reasonably and keep them in a decent, condition. And the report even says it's not in danger of collapse. And yes, maybe I've not been as fast as some people would like for me to be, but so are some of the hours of the day.
And you go back to the report, 2019, the report. Do you not think that things have gotten worse since that report?
He made a comment that they certainly haven't gotten better. And I would have a tendency to agree that it didn't necessarily get the better, except for the things that I did try to do and the city wouldn't let me. I have every intention of doing whatever to make it to where everyone involved thinks it's safe. But the nitpicking is ridiculous.
You mentioned politics.
Oh, yeah, you have no clue how bad it is. Oh, yeah, you probably do in
I
this
do.
town.
The job that I had for 35 years, I do.
I'd rather keep this as fact finding,
Yeah,
please, sir.
There's,
I'd rather keep this as fact finding on record. I don't want to talk other things. I'd rather keep this as fact finding. Thank you. Do we have other questions? for records of fact.
You own this piece of property for 30 years, and this kind of damage just didn't happen like in just a few years or I think just after a tornado. So all the times you were going in and out of this building, how did you let it get into this disarray?
I don't think it's near as bad as the way they're making it appear. You need to understand that when they first looked at it, I made 2 or 3 people in this town mad at me to where they nitpicked a lot more than they should have because of politics.
But the pictures speak for themselves. I mean, the holes in the ground, you know, there's like no beams and there's things going on the wall and
Well, for example, those beams in one of the pictures where one of these supporting walls upstairs had these 45-degree beams helping, and the other one doesn't. That was done by the previous owner who spent $20-some thousand putting a new roof up there. And it's been like that for at least 25 years. And now all of a sudden they want to say that that's not safe and I got to put a couple more supports in. I'll put them in, but they don't really need to be. They're just nitpicking.
but like, what is the purpose of this building?
Pardon?
Like, have you rented out the bottom to those businesses?
I have 1/3 of the building. And as far as it being unsafe, my wife, my children, my grandchildren are all in that front part of the building from at least January through April. So I can promise you, I have never wanted anything to be unsafe when I have all my family in there. And as far as the other 2/3 of the building, that's Black Swan rents both of those from me.
But what's your plan with this? Like, was it just gonna sit like this for years?
No, I just said I will cooperate and do the repairs.
But before you were notified, as you say, you were notified before.
I'm sorry, I could barely hear you.
Before you were notified, were you planning on doing anything?
Yes, I told him that. I told him that right after tax season, I would address all this. Did I?
I'm not gonna say you didn't, but I don't remember.
Okay, I told you, as soon as
You
the
could have,
tax season was over, I
you could
would
have.
address all this. And so now you throw condemnation on me to try to make me go faster or something? I already told you I was gonna address all this stuff this spring.
Sir, if this body would find that the buildings are unsafe and give you time to correct the problems, to bring it to a safe condition, how long would it take?
Given how hard it is to get contractors these days, that's a really tricky question. As my opinion, I don't need an electrician. I might need a brick person to fix the missing bricks that are hanging down, and obviously broken glass I can do myself unless the town wants to say I'm not using the right piece of glass.
Well, you do know you're in a historical preservation district, right?
Pardon?
A historical preservation district.
Yeah, the previous people did not cooperate. As a matter of fact, he owns a building right across the alley that him or your dad or whoever totally redid the front of it, and then the city come along and said, what'd they tell you? I don't even know, but they made him do it over.
So how long do you need?
Well, it's at least 6 months. And there again, I'll do the best I can, but you have no clue how hard it is to get contractors these days. I've got extra money now that tax season is over. I told you I was gonna address all this right after tax season.
Mr. Boosie, are you willing to sit down with staff from the city to determine what permits you need to do the work that needs done?
Yeah.
Are you willing to apply for the permits that you need to do the work that needs done?
Yes.
And are you willing to hire qualified contractors to do the work that you're not qualified to do yourself?
Well, you phrased it that way because I'm a do-it-yourself guy and I can certainly do glass repairs and all that stuff that I'm capable of doing. And I don't know what the codes are here in Pendleton because they're certainly different than they are in Anderson as to who I have to have done by professionals and what I'm allowed to do myself. I've been doing all this stuff for over 50 years. I know how to do 98% of it.
Do you know how to do masonry work, sir?
I have. I do, I never
Would you be
do.
intending to do the masonry work yourself, or would you be hiring a masonry contractor?
I would probably hire that done.
And you think that you could work with the town, and if they were to give you 6 months, that you could diligently work towards bringing it into compliance in that time frame?
I'd do my best.
Any other questions?
And what happens, Steve, at the end of 6 months if that work's not done? What are we gonna do then? We're gonna come back and do this again?
We can talk about potential remedies, what we could do if the work isn't completed on the time schedule that's given here tonight by the BZA.
How about we say that it's set up for a review in like 5 months to where they'll tell me what I'm not happy with, so that I'll still have time to do the rest. And maybe ask for more time, but hopefully not.
I'm not sure of the mechanics of it, but what I had in mind was something where if he applies for the correct permits and those contractors are working through the town would be aware of the guidelines of when these contractors can do the work, because we all know that there are problems in getting materials and getting labor. And so when we say 6 months, that's probably being optimistic, because none of us can know. I mean, there's been certain days in the past year, you couldn't buy a 2x4 if you had to have one. So there may be problems like that, but if you have proper contractors engaged to undertake the tasks that are permitted for, then it should gradually get into a state of completion.
I'd like to just go on record and say that there's nobody in the room that wants to see an empty building. That's not good for the town. It's not good for one person in here. No hard feelings between us. And I like the way you're heading with this. But we've got to.
Please try again.
I said something wrong. What I meant to say was, but I love this open line of communication, and I want no hard feeling. This has been the hardest part of this job that I've had. And I hate it. But I think we can get through this, and nobody wants to see a boarded up building. They're working on the project, just like you said, he is totally right with contractors. And spec houses every day in materials. You can't go to Lowe's and just get what you need anymore, so.
And if you do, you'll pay quadruple what it was a year ago.
That's true too. I just want to go on record and say, I know our staff does not want to see an empty building. Period. But we do need to make it that if they catch us on fire at 3 o'clock in the morning, I go and get my taxes in or whatever. Big heavy snow could happen next week. That building's not gonna come down on us. And, I go to,
especially the front.
I go to bed every night praying for that. So I'm not on TV and you're not on TV. So I just wanted that to be on record. So,
If I may, I think the first step is, there's a lot of simple things that are inexpensive, and that's just to get this building sealed up. Windows repaired, holes in the roof, get something on top of it to keep the elements from coming in and further decay. What little structural integrity is left, if any, in the building. If those things could happen, those are easy. You're not dependent on contractors. You said you do 99% of the work yourself. Those are things that you can do. Personally, you've had 30 years to do them, you haven't done. I am very skeptical in the next 6 months you will even do those simple things, those inexpensive things, things that don't take a lot of skill, just the willingness to do it. But if the town sees that at least he starts with that, then that'll indicate progress. And as we see those, starting with the simple things, the most basic things, getting the building sealed up, he does those things first, then we can give him more time to do those things that are more elaborate, take more skill, take more time, take more supplies. But I'm very skeptical that we'll see that, but we're willing to do that.
And sorry, Scott, if I cut you
No,
off,
that was
but
good.
we're more than willing to compile, maybe like a a list of low-hanging fruit that can be addressed first, and then as we see the progression, the maybe heavier things.
Yeah, our job is to state the problem, not to tell you how to fix it.
Yeah, and then I also wanted to make a comment about the glass in the window. You have to have a certificate of appropriateness because you are in a historic downtown district from our HPC to do any sort of exterior changes, be it as simple as a window pane. Typically, those will come through my office and I can authorize things that are pretty mundane as long as they fit the standards that we have. If it's something a lot more in-depth, if you're ripping an entire face off of a building, that's where HPC would come in and give you that authorization to do so. So I imagine while I was not there, I can't speak to whoever stopped you from putting that window pane in. That's why. Is because you did not have a COA. So I just wanted to put that on the record. That's probably why the work that you were doing got stopped.
Well, I need to say that members of this town, somewhere around 15 years ago, told me off the record that they wanted me to tear that building down so they could put in a parking garage for all the people downtown who never had enough parking. So obviously, when these gentlemen came in, I'm wondering why this is happening, because it was politics there again. And I believe this man, he wants to do his job. But how did I know that they weren't just trying to get me to tear it down so they could put in a parking garage?
That's the last thing we all want.
Yeah, they're
Pardon?
That's the last thing we all want is a parking garage in the middle of a historic downtown.
Yeah.
That's going beside your building. You didn't get those plans?
It happened to me. It really did. I'm not making,
None of the people involved now were involved 15 years ago. And I think that, I'm stepping outside my role a little bit, but I think I can say that none of us want our downtown Pendleton to look like some of the parts of downtown Newcastle.
Exactly.
There's a
Yeah, exactly.
master plan in place that guides all of that.
Mhm.
And our HPC would never allow that anyway. They would be the body to go through to demo a historic building, and I doubt that they would allow that, even if it wasn't for a parking garage. But I can't speak for them, but that's just what I
Well, back
speculate.
then, the town could do whatever they wanted to because they didn't follow the rules.
Well, that was 15 years
We're
ago.
getting off point.
Well, that's the truth.
Anything else, Bryce?
I don't think anything else is very-
Anything else, Anna?
No, Brett?
Thank you.
You can invite a motion to close the public hearing.
Yeah, so closing, we're done with closing statements.
So how do we go about this grant money? The more I don't have
That's a different issue.
So we close the hearing and then discuss it.
Discuss the
evidence.
evidence you just received and what, if anything, you want to do with the order.
Well, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
A second.
Did you want to make the motion?
Okay, I make a motion to close the hearing.
We have a second. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we close the hearing.
Your task tonight, and you could table it until your next meeting, but you don't have to, is to do one of three things, is to affirm the building commissioner's order, overturn it in its entirety and effectively rescind it, or modify the building commissioner's order. It would be, and also you have the opportunity to impose under the unsafe building law a civil penalty if you find the property currently in violation. That civil penalty could be delayed, stayed for a set period of time to enable the property owner to bring the building into compliance. It seems to me that based on what Bryce has provided with the order that was not dated at the top and certain boxes checked, the one in my G drive does, but it appears that wasn't received by the property owner, that at least a modification should be done to modify, to give the property owner certain dates to repair, if that's the way we want to go. But we can issue the order. We could also issue a per day fine, stayed until a date certain. You can also order the property owner to come back you can have them come back at the May, June, July meeting for regular progress reports. But you must make a finding to uphold with regard to is it safe or unsafe. You've had evidence on both sides. And then you can determine the issue of a fine, and if there's going to be a fine, how long before that fine would take effect? The fine would never take effect if the property is brought into compliance, depending on the date that you provide. And you could also order any other conditions that are reasonable that you deem fit.
So does the Indiana statute give the authority to declare a building unsafe to the town building inspector and the fire department?
Yeah,
We
it
don't
does.
have to rely solely on this 3-year-old engineering report.
No, and any evidence you've received tonight, you could consider. The testimony that was given by any person that spoke. There. Any of the pictures that you've received, there's a very relaxed standards of evidence here. It's not like a trial in which things would have to be, you could have hearsay, the pictures, we didn't establish foundation or anything like that, but that's very relaxed. You as the board get to decide what you want to do about this order that's in front of you tonight. Based on the evidence that you've received, the testimony, the statements made by counsel, any of that, you could craft a solution and issue an order.
Right. Oh, okay. I just wanted to make a point that regardless of the engineering report, if it did not exist and we were to have gone into that building, that it still violates at least 6 of our unsafe building law components. You can read them in full in the presentation. There's a lot of things that describe what's going on in this building. And I would also suggest that should Mr. Busey bring these up to code, that a structural engineer go in and give it the all clear. When he comes and says, hey, projects are done, we'll give it a check. And if progress is being made, I see no issue, tell me what you think, but if in 6 months, if that's the amount of time that is given for the property owner, if we see significant progress and more time is needed because of COVID constraints, supply chain, we'd be willing to continue that if that's allowed.
It is allowed. You can give that authority to staff, and you can also request that as part of the order, the property owner is requesting. It could be by counsel, it could be by phone, to appear to give updates.
I would prefer if, say you give 6 months or however long you declare, if that's the route you're going, that he comes back to this board to review.
I agree.
What about the occupancy of the building?
You have the authority to prohibit, subject to judicial review, of course, but you have the ability to prohibit human habitation. And there, I would make a fine, I wouldn't continue that to a certain date. I would make a different finding later on down the road. That, when the town of Pendleton some years ago adopted the unsafe building law, it states that if a building is unsafe for human habitation, it is subject to this action we're going through tonight. So and not to rehash, one of the things that was talked about is, well, it's my business if the garage falls in. Well, some time ago, the town determined that if it's in the municipal limits, that's not just his business. So that is the standard by which the building can be brought up to. The word condemnation in this instance doesn't mean that you guys issue an order of condemnation today and tomorrow Rescue shows up with a wrecking ball. That's not how it would work. It is, you would be condemning it as unsafe and then providing a timeline, a guideline. We need to see substantial progress on these dates. And if they do, that gives the property owner the ability to get back in compliance with the unsafe building law. Good for everybody.
All right, so I guess we need to make a determination on whether we feel like the evidence presented, whether the building's unsafe. Is that a motion?
Yes, we should make that determination today.
And what standard would we use to determine a time frame for?
You've got carte blanche on that. I really don't have a guide. Past experience, with the unsafe building law, it's pretty common to request updates at each meeting subsequent to the order. 30 days is very reasonable, and based on what Mr. Reski's provided in his testimony, that seems like, and this gentleman's skill set, it seems like some of that work can at least be done during that 30 days.
So if we see substantial progress at the next meeting, then the tenants can stay.
That's up to you guys. That would be one.
I mean, that would be reasonable,
Yeah.
or?
Well, you find that the arbitrary is reasonable.
As being in, as someone that's looked at the building and seen every part of the building, I would certainly entertain that idea. And that where the occupants are located towards the front of the building is not nearly as dilapidated as the back of the building that you can see all the way through. Another thing too is I guess if you're gonna give a little cushion here, is this report documents heavy wet snow in several areas. I'm not concerned about this at this point. I mean, the roof getting a bunch of heavy load on it, causing it to collapse, so for lack of better terms, we can extend that part of it a little bit since we're into the summer months or whatever, and allow him time to get that shored up, stabilized, and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the building envelope needs to be sealed up.
Yeah.
Within 30 to 60 days.
I guess something that I unfortunately just thought of when you mentioned occupants. You know, in regards to the health, safety, and welfare of not just the occupants, but the people coming in to frequent which would be the patrons, and hearing if there was a fire, it's too unsafe to go into. And we as a board oversee the welfare of the patrons. That's a heavy load.
And I think even while Brett mentioned that, the front of the building might be a little bit more stable, it doesn't mean that a back collapse or something of that
because
nature couldn't cause a domino effect.
A fire is a
Which is
fire. They
a
have
fire
to
is a fire.
access it
Yeah.
from all
Right.
angles, all directions. And when that disaster happens, we are the ones that have to live with that decision. The health, safety, and welfare is what guides our decision. And as an owner, when you buy a commercial property, it takes on a different responsibility. You have a different responsibility and ownership than a personal property because of occupants and patrons. I think those are heavy things to consider, aside from getting into the semantics of everything else that's been presented. I think that guides our decision. That's mine.
So was the order that was delivered to the owner sufficient to proceed with upholding the order? I mean, with the,
There is language in there about the building being unsafe. Now, the specifics, it would be likely, the document itself says repair rehabilitation of an unsafe building, but it doesn't go into any specifics. At least the ones that Bryce presented didn't have the boxes checked. So the issue of fine based on the failure to comply by April 15th would likely be beyond the pale.
Sure.
But the unsafe condition itself, that could be determined here today.
So I guess I need to look to entertain a motion to declare the building unsafe.
Yes, you can
Based
do
on the
that.
testimony.
You can do that. I think the first decision that should be made is to affirm, overturn or modify the building commissioner's order, and I think we've all landed on modify.
Yeah.
So I think that should be the first finding of the BZA on this particular issue. That would need to be, I don't get it.
So I guess I'll entertain a motion to uphold as written, modify or deny the order.
If they declared it unsafe, it's the
I'll make a
Roxanne have to
motion
do that.
to modify the order of condemnation. March 31st.
So we can second and approve that and then make the
And then make the
modification.
modification.
Okay, so
If
we
you
have,
like or do it all at once, however.
okay, well, let's go ahead and wait a second on that.
Well, how would you modify it? I guess I would want to know the modifications.
First of all, he has to receive the order. I think you're not the wrong order.
Well, I definitely think the compliance date needs to be modified.
Mhm.
And things have to be checked on.
If you're not going to affirm or rescind the order, modification is the only way to go. So, and then you can get into the issue. How you're going to modify that on a separate motion if you'd like.
Quick question. What would rescinding the order, what would be the result of rescinding the order?
If you rescind the order, you're finding that the building commissioner's order should have no legal effect. So it would be as if it were never issued.
And can we go back to the drawing board?
Mhm. Yeah, you could, the building commissioner could file another one tomorrow.
I'll second the modification.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to modify the order. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
All right, so we've, motion to modify the order has passed, so let's discuss the modifications, and then we can make a second motion to make those modifications. So we need a reasonable compliance date. We've discussed 6 months, is that the same?
One of the things you discussed, and you mentioned a term, I have no idea what it means, but you said building envelope sealed within 30 days.
Well, I mean, just the holes in the roof, the holes in the windows where water can intrude.
Is that what that means?
Yeah.
So you
So-
could, that could be part of the modification, that the building envelope, as you described, could be sealed within 30 days. And I'll write all this down for you to sign later, depending on what the board decides. But that could be one of the things you've modified the commissioner's order, that it's unsafe, but we're modifying it to require these things to happen.
So yeah, I definitely agree, and we can discuss, but getting the building sealed up as soon as possible, and then we have him come back and present an update next month. With the ultimate thought of all repairs being done within 6 months. And as far as, imposing a civil penalty. I don't know that that's necessary at this time if he's willing to cooperate.
He didn't even officially receive the order.
My,
So he should have some notice.
yeah, my general suggestion would be that you could issue a civil penalty, but not to start until the expiration of the 6 months. Then if nothing's been done, and we get to 5 months in 30 days, and well, I've got 2 more weeks of work to do, fine, we can do the work. But at that point, if we're 6 months from now and nothing happens for whatever reason, he wins the lottery and sipping an umbrella drink. At that point, then this part of it would already be done. A fine could be issued, which could eventually be reduced to a judgment and a lien, and allow the town to take more substantive action. But anything prior to 6 months, based on, things that has been discussed, probably is, I don't know.
Okay,
a bit much.
Council, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Chairman, council, have we cleared the issue on occupancy or not?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
We're only at the modification stage right now.
Discussion on the modifications.
I would ask if it would be fair to extend the occupancy of the building a month at a time based on progress shown at every report. If we do it once a month, that's just a straw man to start with.
That would be something you could put in order. You're gonna find the building is unsafe for human habitation.
Yeah, I don't think we should allow occupancy until the fire department says that it's safe for occupants.
I would agree to that.
So
Make a motion to vote.
yes, sir. So I guess when entertain a motion to, we have several modifications, right? We want to do 30 days to seal up the building. 6 months to have all repairs completed that were specified by the town in the testimony. And not allow occupancy of the building until it's been inspected and approved by the fire department and the building inspector.
That includes a structural engineer with our inspector. Does that need to be stated?
Any condition that we're gonna put on it would need to be
And so
voted on by the
part
board.
of the approval would be an inspection and approval by a licensed structural engineer. Do we need to stipulate the time frame to vacate the building?
Yes.
Is there discussion on that? I mean, what's a reasonable time frame in your experience?
Quick, because of that, you know, you're declaring tonight that that this building is not fit for human habitation, and there's humans in there, and the point that this system brings up is well taken. Heaven forbid Murphy's Law, yet so someone is injured tomorrow or 2 weeks, and you gave them 3 weeks.
I'm assuming, landlord tenant, none of that applies when the building's unsafe, right?
Right, it's a different area of the law.
Right, so I mean, do we need, 48 hours or?
Three days until a certain time on the 22nd.
So 9 PM on April 22nd. I guess I'd be looking for a motion to amend the order with those stated. So if this gets approved tonight, we would see progress report in 30 days. See that he met the first requirement, which would be sealing up the building by next month's meeting.
And you could also require substantial improvement each 30-day period thereafter.
Yeah, I think he needs to appear at each meeting with progress reports until it's complete. We need to stipulate that. So go ahead and add the additional requirement that he be present at each BZA meeting with progress report. And that substantial progress has been made. So regarding the civil penalty, if all repairs are not completed within 6 months,
Then, like 10-19.
we would impose a civil penalty. I mean, this says not to exceed $5,000. I mean, is that per day or?
Generally $100 per day is that's a pretty darn quick, but
So-
not
So
insane.
we'll add the stipulation that if the repairs As discussed this evening by the town aren't completed within 6 months, there'll be a civil penalty of $100 a day. And that's subject to, like you said, if you get down to the finish line.
You can always change it.
Okay.
And they can extend, and they extend.
You can extend, you can alter at future meetings any part of this.
So he would consent back here.
So if you see progress, that fine would continue to move out if they move the.
No, not automatically. It would have, they could vote at the next meeting, to move it out another.
Okay.
Real quick, do we have an approved list of required repairs that will be agreed to by
I can put that
the
together.
owner and then who's going to inspect it and determine if it's been done correctly? Is that an engineer
That
or
would be
city?
the building inspector,
City
structural engineer, and fire. So we can have you put together a list of repairs that would need to be done for fire, and we would just pull from this report and any additional that we noticed that weren't addressed.
That's what I was gonna ask, any post compliance reports from that the structural engineer might notice? How would then we get notified of those and then to be able to review those or address those? How is that handled?
And I guess after the structural engineer presents the report to the town, that we would see that at the next meeting. We're doing monthly updates.
So I imagine if the slew of repairs are done, that require a structural engineer to sign off. That could be done. I don't know if it would necessarily need to be done monthly, or if there was a few things that took a couple of months and then they would come in and assess more than one item. So that way it's done in bulk.
I mean, do we really need an engineer to tell us if the building's envelope is sealed up? Probably not.
I think it's the
You know,
structural
the
items.
Structural items, yeah, structural
And
integrity.
fire would require an engineer, but the fire department in some
And
aspects.
so once the inspector, the engineer, and the fire department are satisfied, then we can entertain a certificate of occupancy for the building. That's all the modifications. Any other? So I'll look to entertain a motion to amend the order with the modifications we've discussed.
I make the motion to amend the order with the items we just discussed.
Does that include the $100 a day penalty that will be stayed suspended for 6 months from today's date?
Yes.
Do we have a second? Second. Discussion. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. I think that is everything. Meeting adjourned.
Excuse me, question?
Yeah.
Could we have a certificate of insurance from that business owner or that property owner? That he does have insurance on that building?
I mean, the town can request that.
The town can request that, then yes.
Okay.
If I could-